Check, quick sound check. Can everybody hear us loud and clear? What's going on, Coach Paul?
Hey, Coach Jay, how you doing today?
Doing good, doing good. Give me 1 second because I hear doubling of your audio, but it's definitely on my side. But I'm doing good, Coach. How are you?
Um, Little bored. Had a decent day trading. I think I could have traded better. How
Okay.
about our audience? Let us know how you did today. Any questions you have, um, and let's get at it.
Let's get
Very
into it. Uh, Welcome everyone to At the Buzz Hour Market Recap. What's up, Coach Vince in the chat? Uh, Welcome to At the Buzz Hour Market Recap. If this is your first time here, I'm Coach Jay. That is Coach Paul. The goal of this segment is to review what happened in the markets for the day. We may talk about some markets that you have not traded before, but we believe our job as traders is to identify opportunity, see how we could have taken advantage of those opportunities while managing our risk. This is our first time meeting. I am Coach Jay. I've been a Topstep Performance Coach since June of 2023. I've been trading for the past 12 years and in the futures for the markets for the past 5. And that's Coach Paul. Coach Paul, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Coach Paul. I've been with Topstep for a year and a half as a performance coach. I've been involved in the futures industry for 4 decades, of last 25 trading, and I'm here to share some of my experiences and hopefully impart some wisdom to help you become a better trader. Where
Awesome.
do we
Thank you.
start today, Coach?
Where do we start? Let's start with the chat. We see all good from Manny to trade. Charles Williams says a trade too far. Kung Fu, one up, one down. Uh, Life could be a dream says, come on, people with the likes. I definitely agree with that one. Make sure you hit that like button. Coach Vince, rough morning, but later afternoon was good. I'm trying to think. I had a decent overnight trade. I've been trading some XFAs in Quant Tower. They're not on Top X. But I had a decent trade in the Nikkei, then got caught up a little bit with a Nasdaq, trying to buy the Nasdaq a little bit early, and then ultimately got on the right side of the markets and was able to hold a decent trade. His royal trade says everyday trading is effing awesome, and I would I would agree with that. Let me see if I can fix this green screen going over here on your side, Coach. Um, there you go. It's back again. Okay, there it is. We're good.
Check.
Um, but yeah, if you overtraded or anything like that, try to identify why you overtraded, what might have caused your overtrading, um, and if it's something that you can realize in real time, see what you can do to limit that. Right? Is it the amount of trades that you made? Is it you were up and then continued to see opportunities and make decisions, but those decisions were lower quality? Try to figure that out, and if it's something you can realize in real time, when it does happen, hopefully you can pull yourself away from the screens before it forces you into making decisions that you don't necessarily agree with.
Yeah, great
Carl
advice.
Carl says, "Hit them with a chair if they don't get the likes up." Um, I don't know if that's going to increase the likes or not, but um,
Which
we'll
chair?
we'll we'll throw a chair as a warning shot maybe. But let's get into these markets. We didn't have much as far as planned news out today. We did have an OPEC monthly report. Outside of that, we had a New York Fed inflation expectation number that came out. A couple of Fed speakers, but we know the bigger news for the week is coming out a little bit later. Starts tonight if you're trading the yen or the Nikkei with the Japanese PPI. And then tomorrow we have the US CPI, a couple of more Fed speakers, and US PPI and jobless claims on Thursday. So a little heavier at the end of the week as far as news goes. We may see some range expansion because of that going into the next couple of days, but not too much on the calendar for today. All right.
Yeah, it sounded like they were making something up there, some of those numbers to me.
Fed
Just
inflation
express.
expectations.
Yeah. That- Isn't that always an expectation?
Right.
It's-
Exactly. Um, Hoops has been trading scared lately myself, overly cautious, taking profits too quick, risk too tight. Scale down a little bit. Maybe decrease your size. We would tell basketball players all the time, right? Some of my best shooters, if they're not seeing a three go in, get a layup. Get a layup. See something go through the basket. Maybe even go to the free throw line, right? Just attack the basket, go to the free throw line so you can get an easy shot to go in, get you back in rhythm, and then maybe you can scale up again. Sometimes I think when things aren't going well, we start to choke up a little bit and really not let the trades work. I talked to Coach Paul. Coach Paul, I think last month we were talking about I had the yips. And I felt like I could not place a decent trade and hold on to it for a very long time. I think I'm getting out of that now. Um, and it took, just scaling back a little bit and uh, not, not, don't want to say not caring so much, but um, just letting go a little bit of the result and just letting things happen.
Yeah, that's it. When we can't control when the wins and losses come, and then when we're trading, or if we're following our plan or our system, there's going to be drawdowns. There's going to be a series of consecutive losses, and that's the really hard part where you get shy of, and then you don't take trades because you're being defensive. And sure enough, there's the one that rips, and then you end up chasing it. That's part of trading, but if you have good account management with your focus on keeping the account alive, and then as coach said, you can size down, um, and make a layup. Um, so that's actually probably half the time. That's what trading feels like. Uh, so keeping disciplined um, should get you around the corner.
Take a look at these markets. There are about 35 different markets that we can trade with Top Step accounts. Here at the Buzzer, we like to focus on all of them, right? There might be opportunities in different places, not just in the equities or the metals. So, to the downside today, we had copper down 2.02%. I'm going to talk about that one because that was on my scouting report. Wheat down 2.12%, and soybean oil, our biggest percentage mover to the downside, at 3.91%. To the upside, we have lean hogs up 0.79%, silver up 0.87%, and micro Bitcoin futures up 2.01% for our biggest percentage mover to the upside. To talk about our big four, we have crude oil down 0.03%, the Nasdaq down 0.12%, S&Ps down 0.25%, and gold down 0.47% to round out the big four. Let's go to the Nasdaq. And Coach, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. We had the rally after the going into and after the election last week. We had a consolidation Friday, and then we saw these moving averages, the 20 and the 50, start to wrap around each other. And we said, we either consolidate for a little while, continue to break out, or at some point see a potential test of this 200 moving average on the 30-minute chart. And that's what we got today, right? Starting off the week. And I remember, doing the market kickoff. We talked about this 200 moving average on the 30-minute being at 20,865, and being the nature of a moving average, it's going to move and get a little bit closer to the market. But trending up towards where price was trading. We finally got a test of it today. We looked below it and popped right back above,
You know,
but pretty much in that consolidation still. What are you seeing in the equity markets right now, Coach?
uh, that word consolidation
Yep.
is another word for that is balance. Um, as all these Another thing, look at all the moving averages are getting coming into a point. Um, we should break out of here. I favor the upside because, well, it is stocks, but um, the volume has been average at best. It needs a little spark here, or you could see a bigger correction. But I mean, this is really, we've been in the same range since Friday. So we did get under the 200, bounced right back, and then finished where we bounced back with tiny ranges. Um, so I think tomorrow, I think we're going to break out of this. I favor myself. I'll be trading it to the upside, but the tiny range today in the Nasdaq, 197 and a half points, with an average true range of 325. Um, let's get at it tomorrow. But after that huge rally last week, it makes sense to find some balance here. Um, and away we go tomorrow. How about you?
Uh, yeah, I'm seeing the same thing. We have the catalyst tomorrow for potential break of this range. We talked about this range contraction, where the daily ATR is 300 points. The last 3 days have been under that daily ATR. So if we, understand how averages work, at some point that range has to expand again. And what better day than tomorrow, where we have a catalyst that could shake up these markets either to the upside or the downside for that range expansion. And that's what I'm expecting. Going to read it however the market decides to play it. I would be leaning to the long side as well, just because these markets are made to go up and look like they want to continue going up. But if that catalyst changes anything, then just have to be ready to adjust uh, at the time. Um, if we look at last night's 30-minute opening range in the Nasdaq, uh, VWAP stayed in that range for a very long time. Really no urgency at all, and we can see it in the price action. We talked about this consolidation. Um, in the house account. Trying to remember how they traded this. Dakota had a really nice short actually. So props to Dakota for holding on to this short, where he got short in this consolidation here. I'm going to be straight up honest. That is not a trade that I would have been able to hold, because I think he was short from 20,001. Sorry, 20,215, or yeah, 215. I believe he was short, and did not get very favorable price action for almost an hour in that trade, where price came down to his entry, bounced pretty much at his entry, showed maybe a tick or two in the profit and bounced. And I had a trader ask, Jay, what's your perspective on that? How do you hold a trade in that situation? I'm gonna be honest, I don't. Um, this price action for me tells me, especially on a shorter time frame, just don't trade these markets. And I think that's the nature of different traders, right? Dakota found a level that he liked, was okay with where the risk was and the time that it was going to take to stay in that trade, right? He does that slow markets session for a reason, right? Where he's comfortable putting on a trade at a price and just allowing it to go to another price. That's a trade that I would have cut and just waited for more momentum like price action in something like this, and taking a trade here. So how about you, coach? If you enter a trade here, um, in this consolidation, maybe you don't realize it's a consolidation until you enter it, but it's a level that you like. How do you manage those trades?
Well, any trade that I enter, um, uh, um, I risk two average true ranges in that time frame.
Okay.
Um, and unless something comes out where it gets over the 200 moving average, or then I'll get out sooner. But yeah, you know that's the way I look at it. Um, but everyone's different, and I can't say this enough. Um, Dakota does what he does. He's got the patience. He will take losses. He loses more than he wins on days, but he knows his process. He's very disciplined in it. He and today it took time because what happened? We didn't move.
Right.
So um that also can bring trouble to undisciplined traders. looking for a reason that this needs to move or it's going to move, impatience. That's where you get ground up if you're not, um, if you don't have a solid process. So, hats off to Coach Dakota. One thing to learn from that is he understands what he's looking for, and he is fearless when it comes to patience of following his process. So that'd be a lesson. If one of the things that we preach here at the buzzer is defining opportunities. If it's not there, either turn off the computer, or maybe there's an opportunity somewhere else.
Right.
Um,
Uh,
but
there's a Go ahead, coach.
be patient. The biggest thing is be patient.
Right. There's a comment from Louis with a one lot. Nothing against Dakota, but doesn't that show that it was a 50-50 trade, like every trade? But shouldn't he had cut it and looked to take it again? Not necessarily, right? That depends on his trading plan. And we got to remember that the outcome of any trade, regardless of the probabilities that our playbook might tell us, the outcome of any trade is a 50-50, right? It may be higher probability. I could say, yeah, I've seen this work out 70% of the time. But for this one specific trade, it's either going to win or it's going to lose, right? I think if we look at it this way, if I'm looking at this as on a shorter time frame, does this feel like a 50-50? Absolutely. But if I zoom out and look at a 30-minute chart, is that still the case, right? If I zoom out and look at a 4-hour chart, is that still the case? So it depends on the time frame that you're looking at the markets. I think any trade is a potential 50-50, and I have no problem holding on to trades either. Best trade I took today was a long in the Nasdaq from 21,066. But if we look at the time frame here, right, this was an hour of consolidation and price action in a 72-point range. And where I got in on the long down here was the same amount of time, but favorable price action, right? Where the market was doing something. I'm okay. And again, everyone has different management styles. As long as the market is moving, I'm okay trailing it and holding it and trying to stay in as long as possible. For me, the trail was, anchor a VWAP to what ended up being the low of the day, getting in at 66, and if we get a close below VWAP on a 3-minute chart, then I'm out. And then trying to find some market structure to trail behind. And it ended up being a 2.5 hour trade. I think I went and picked up lunch, took a walk outside, but the markets were moving. So for me, it's a little bit easier to trade when the markets are, to me, chopping around. I'm more comfortable just waiting for a time when they are going to move. And I think the one sacrifice I might have with doing that is uh, I may sacrifice trade location in this case, right? If I waited to take a short where Dakota did, where he was up here at 215, I may not have gotten short, you know, for 60 points to the downside where we actually start to get some momentum. So um, it depends on your style and going from there.
Okay.
Uh,
With that, we have a question from Alexander S.
okay.
I have a $10 stop on a micro contract. Is this? I'm assuming that's micro Nasdaq. I get stopped often. Is it too small a stop? Well, if you're getting stopped out often, that's most likely the case. I don't know what your time frame is, but $10 stop in micro Nasdaq is what, 5 points. Um, that is most likely the problem. It's too, you're getting stopped out. You're not giving enough room. While you don't want to lose money, you don't want to pay the risk most likely. So, um, what I would suggest is whatever time frame you're using, start looking at the average true range, and if you're putting a stop within that average true range, then it's too tight. I think you would like to add, Coach?
5 points on the Nasdaq, you have to be daredevil levels of accuracy with your trade location, and it's very hard to do. It's not impossible, but it is extremely hard to do. And even if you're right about your trade location, 5 points in the Nasdaq can happen. On if a spread is too wide. Uh, so see if there's some room to open up that stop a little bit, and keep your size small. Where if you are worried about the dollar wise risk, then don't size up. Trade 1 or 2 micros, and you should be okay. Um, Question from Zach Friedrich. So you just went with that candle that ended up being the low because it was high volume. Yeah. So this short that I took, I'm sorry, the long that I took, I actually tried to take it a couple of times, and got stopped out for. Uh, Give me 1 second. So we have this 3 minute opening range here. I'll talk about exactly what that trade was. We have VWAP. So this is regular trading hours VWAP, and we can see that it never left the opening range in the beginning of the day. So we have this price action that's going to the downside. And initially, where I took the long was 150, 21 150. You can kind of see it here. We had, what looked like a bottoming pattern. Um, Took the first long at 21 150 and was looking for 21 200. Took 2 contracts off in back in the opening range, and then the other one for break even. Took the same trade again here. And got stopped out on break even for this, looking for those longs. And then when the market eventually flushed, I did not take part in this short, but I'm seeing the volume build as we continue to go lower. And then let me see if we have it up here. On the Top Step Daily Levels webpage, uh, there are some levels that are at right around that level. Give me 1 second, I'll put that in the chat. But myself, I had a sell side imbalance that I put on the Top Step Daily Levels at 2165. I also saw that Coach Ray had an average daily range low at 2161 and a quarter, and Coach Vince had a support at 2150. So all kind of in this area. I think I had the highest level up there at 2165. Came down to that area. We had the highest volume of the day outside of the opening hour, and it looked like a reversal pattern, right? This to me is not sustainable volume. So I'm looking at this candle and saying, if we can trade back above it, right? And that's what we've been calling the J trade, right? If we can trade back above this high volume, then I like this to the upside. And if I attach a VWAP to it, even more opportunity. So my long entry was around 50% of this candle, a little bit lower than it, and then just going to trail it up as it goes. Um,
It's interesting, Coach.
what's up?
You tried to buy it 3 times, correct?
Hmm.
Was that were you purposely trying to do that, or was it what you thought because it didn't leave the VWAP didn't leave the opening range?
So for me, when VWAP doesn't leave this range and it's fairly flat, it's telling me that there's a range bound market and the likelihood of revisiting these prices is pretty high. I just didn't know from where I was buying it where that low of the range was going to be, right? Was it going to be at 150? Was it going to be a little bit lower? Obviously, if we zoom out, we had yesterday's low, which was right around 20,100. So I could have waited for that as a test. But the one thing I said it in the chat when I took the trade, I'm not going to let this trade get in my pocket at all because I know that I'm trying to find where the bottom is. So if at all this trade is in the profit, if it doesn't bounce from here, I'm okay getting out and finding out where that low is. Ultimately, it ended up being where that imbalance was. And then if we look back to uh, November 7th, which was election day, I'm going to go to a 30-minute chart. We had this candle here. This is the opening 30-minute candle for the New York session on election day. And this is where, if I'm looking at a lot of a volume analysis, these are untested imbalances that we had in this range. What does that mean? We had a 30-minute candle that was about 100 points, and we never traded back into this range. We did it today, right?
Almost
Pretty
to the
much to
50%.
exactly, exactly. So I knew I was kind of preempting this bottom, looking at a higher time frame chart. I said, you know, there is potential for this to go lower. I don't. I could have been a seller, but I didn't see the momentum leaving the range for me to sell it. There was some opportunity, but I kind of passed on those, and then was just trying to find where that bounce was going to be, and not going to risk a whole lot doing it. Because if I held on to this trade, right, there's 150 points to the downside before it eventually went in my favor, and I'm just not going to stomach that risk. So putting the trade on, keeping the risk fairly tight, and then once we got that volume reaction at the lows, then it was a lot easier to hold on to that trade.
Great. That's great discipline. Great trading, coach.
Thanks, coach. Anything else on the Nasdaq? If not, we take a quick look at the S and Ps. Fairly similar story in the S and Ps. We haven't talked about this a whole lot recently, but again, that highest volume in the S and P, it was even more dramatic because we traded through that 6,000 level in the S and Ps. We see the volume increasing, and then we get higher volume at these lows than we had on the opening candle, which does not happen very often. And then if we frame out that candle, once we close above that again, that was it for the day. So, um,
That's a great definition. That's the flush.
we,
It's the flush. All the volume came in. Probably got some new shorts, hit some stops, and then at some time it probably got really slow, really quiet. But I love that definition. The classic J trade.
sometimes it happens, right? And I think why we're calling this one the J trade is because sometimes it's a 3 bar reversal. But if we look at this on a 3 minute, it took a little while to close outside of that. Now you could preempt this long and get in this range here, and that's what I did in the Nasdaq. But once we get a close above that volume, which is right here, it to me it's just a higher probability trade, right? Where higher chances of this trade working out once we close outside of that range. And then, of course, that's going to depend on the time frame that you're trading it. Coach, we got a VIP in the chat. Shout out to Mr. Eddie Horn. Eddie, thank you
Eddie.
for joining us.
Welcome, Eddie.
Thank you for joining us, Eddie. Um, but yeah, pretty much the same story here in the S and Ps as well. In that consolidation, um, tested below the 200 moving average and popped right back above it. And we will see what tomorrow brings. Coach Zach says
Yeah.
that explanation of the flush just made so much sense to me.
Oh, good. That's. I mean, that's, and because it is like everything gets blown out, right, and then reset. That's why I really love the way that trade is defined, because it has to have, number one, the volume. If it didn't have the volume, then we wouldn't have people blowing out of longer positions. Most likely, the classic stop run, a flush. And it's hard. By the way, it's probably hard to buy it down there for most traders, because
Sure.
what just happened? Panic, right?
Right.
Oh, it's the end. It's, by the way, so being able to define that and take the proper risk. We've seen this trade happen many times, and the thing is, it doesn't happen every day. But if you can get it, whether it's in SP, Nasdaq, gold, micro, Bitcoin, it's a hard trade to take because it's a fade, but
For sure.
you have a good reason to. So love that
And I think
trade.
why I really love it as well is the opportunity to limit risk, right? Where I could go to ATRs here, but if I go to ATRs and my stop is way out of the way, if we start to trade below where that high volume came in, that's probably what I'm going to cut before it gets to my stop because that might not be the bottom, right? That's the same thing in the NASDAQ, right? I could have gone with a 2 ATR stop on the 3 minute here after this. Let me clean up these charts because they're getting a little messy. But this high volume here, I could have gone 2 ATR stops here. I would have gotten stopped out. But once I start to see price fail to close above this range and hold above it and maybe close below it, I can take the trade off and say this is the wrong location for that idea, and then just wait for that idea to play out. But I think we spent a lot of time on the equities there. Let's move on to gold. Dan Trader says over 600 people and only 68 lots. LFG Muhammad could be watching, need to get to 100 at least. Let's see how high we can get these likes up. 667 people watching. Let's see if we can get it to 300 before we end for the session. Let's talk about gold, coach.
Yeah, that was speaking of flushes.
Let's see. Here is gold. Here's last night's 30-minute opening range. I'll put up your moving averages as well. Let's take some of this stuff off of here. We're under the 200 moving average on the 30-minute, the 50 and the 20 trailing, trending lower. Uh, what are you seeing here, coach?
Well, the same as we were talking yesterday.
Is it
You
over?
hit it, but the pressure, no, it's not over. It's not over till I say it's over. And you'll never hear me say it's over because I don't know. But,
Right.
you know, hey, what's interesting is Bitcoin continues on its terror and gold is fading. Um, Now, I'm a technician. Why it's doing it, I could give you some reasons why I think it's happening, but that's my opinion. My broker has never accepted my opinion as margin. Um, I've tried, but I find it very interesting. Bitcoin, it's almost if we put a Bitcoin chart next to that, it would be like the symmetrical opposite. Um,
See if I can do that real quick. Let's see what we got here.
yeah. Now do that trick with the alt,
Okay.
where you can flip the chart.
Uh, there we go. Yeah, completely
I mean,
inverse,
it's
right?
just
Gold on the left side here, Bitcoin on the right. And if we flip the gold chart, it looks identical to uh, almost like you can see, if we flip this over, you can see the buyers leaving gold and putting that money into Bitcoin. It's like a handoff,
and who would do that? Large institutions.
right?
I'm not, that's all I'm going to say. Large institutions. This is not a retail um, happening with uh, this is major money, um, and you can make up your own scenarios. I'm just saying it's technically that's what's happening. Um, Now,
A
if
lot
we
of
go to
sense.
yeah, I mean, but why I won't go down that path.
I was about to go down it, but go ahead.
I I won't go down that path. I can have I can have different reasons, but what'll happen is I I am tempted to stake my trading on my opinion. And when we do that, we'll ignore information that things are changing. We won't, we won't take proper losses. We won't let winners ride. And what'll happen is indecision comes when it's not going. Where I know I'm focused on, I'm a technician. I'm a technician. That's the way I see markets. That's the way I have to trade them. But um, very interesting. Can it continue? Well, sure. Let's take a look at the daily.
Here's the
Oh
daily in
boy.
gold on the left side and Bitcoin on the right side. And I know you say you won't go down that path, coach, but uh, just indulge me just a little bit here. We talked about gold, and if you know this is a market that has been in an uptrend all year. We had Bitcoin that was consolidating while gold was moving up, and if you were a bull in gold and wanted to take that profit and potentially put it somewhere else, what about the the risk asset of the future, taking out of one and put it into the other one? And to me, that's kind of what it looks like. Again, that's just me writing a story in my head. That story does not help me trade at all, but it's interesting to see this for sure. Uh, Here we are on the daily with both of these markets.
Now let's add quickly the bonds, a third chart to that. And I think this is a
See what
tip.
my
You
production
can,
value is.
all right. Whoa.
Oh, hold on, getting a little crazy here. Remove the indicator so we can actually see the charts. All right, so we got gold on the top left, micro Bitcoin on the top right. I'm gonna put the 30-year on the bottom left, and we'll go with the 10-year on the bottom right.
All right. So look at this bond in tenure. And gold almost the cost of gold is foregoing interest payments. Interest rates are going up when most of the punditry assumed that interest rates were going down. Um, and with the velocity, um, the game is on to me. There's this well, the bonds and the 10-year were pretty steady selling today. They didn't really come up for breath. Oh, that whole time gold was it was dragging down gold. Um, the trend is right now in the bonds and the 10-year or interest rates are higher interest rates, lower bond prices. Um, and that doesn't seem like it's going to stop. The more that happens, the less appeal um, the shiny metal has. So um, we live in interesting times. So I'm tempted to say I want to sell gold, but then that would be just my opinion. It's still in an uptrend. We could see any day where all of a sudden, wow, what happened? What's up $200? Or it's down $300. But something's going to pop here, and it's coming soon. So um,
But
very interesting.
price perspective, and looking at still, a potential for myself at least. And my opinion does not mean anything. The market's going to do whatever they want, but I would not be surprised at a test of 2,500 in gold before we continue to rally up. Uh, the markets are going to do whatever they want, but why did I say? Let me put the moving averages back on here. 2,500. Same thing we were kind of seeing in the Nasdaq on the shorter time frame chart, but the 200 moving average on the daily trending up towards the market as the market's moving down. Just looks like a little bit of a collision course around that 2,500 area for a potential test of that 200 moving average that we have not had on the daily all year. Um, but anything is going to happen. That doesn't help me make a day trade. So that is just opinion. Um,
It's interesting. The question from Mal Trader. So would bonds be pricing in interest rate hike stagnation in the short term? Um, I would look at it this way: who who buys our debt? China is one of the largest. If they choose not to buy that debt, there's less buyers of bonds. They have to go higher in yield to search investors. Well, let's just say Chinese say, no, we don't have a flavor for bonds. Um, we'll just buy Bitcoin. We'll take our gold, and instead of buying bonds, we'll just buy Bitcoin. Um, that's the way I see it. Um, but if the Fed lose control of the bond market, which I don't know, I've lived long enough to see that, all hell breaks loose. That's what I'm gonna tell you right now. It's, um, and it's. I'm not saying that's happening, and I'm not saying it's going to, but the way this Bitcoin and bond and gold are acting, something major is going on. Um, how it plays out,
We shall see.
we shall see.
We shall see. Let's go over to crude oil real quick. Crude on a 30-minute chart. Crude has been in a little bit of a downtrend here uh, in the medium time frame. This is a 30-minute chart. We're under the 200 moving average, the 20 and the 50 trending lower. Consolidated today looks a lot like the Nasdaq chart, ES chart at the highs right now. A little bit of a consolidation. If we zoom out and go to a daily chart, we are near some higher time frame demand that we've seen in crude. The $67 level. If we look at the daily chart, we're kind of making higher lows. So I'm interested to see whether or not the $67 level holds, and then we get a bounce in crude, or do we try to take out some of these lows and maybe test the yearly low, which is down at 63.50, we'll call it. Pretty consolidated market, not one that I looked at today to take a trade, especially today where it was extremely consolidated. We've had some, decent range in crude. Today was not one of those days. Uh, for not for a trend trade at least. Here's the first 30 minutes from last night. If we attach VWAP to that, did present some opportunity to take trades off of this 30-minute range. Not the cleanest trade from what I've seen. And that's going to happen, right? We had range expansion the past 2 days. If we understand how averages work, we need to contract a little bit, and that's what we got today. Anything on crude oil, Coach?
Coach, I think there is a trend.
Okay.
Whatever it did the day before, do the opposite. Um, sell the rally, but once again, we're grinding back and forth, um, which for a lot of traders, that should be great. Like I said, there is no trend. It's over a longer period of time. Um, find a place and fade it. I mean, look at it did last night. Whoa, what time was the high made?
High in crude today was made right on the New York session open,
Okay, and when we
right on the
started to
open.
buy it on London, um, by the way, it was a great rally, right? After yesterday's big drop.
Hit about
So
50% of yesterday's range.
yeah, so
Pretty
right,
close.
there was there you go. There was two-way trade. Um, gold is continuing to do that. I have to get used to that if I'm trading crude, and I'm not very good at it. Um, but
This would be a pretty
it's
clean setup for me to trade crude. I don't trade it very often.
uh, we'll have to ask D sometime. Um, but right off, if we look at the New York Open when it made those highs, and we put a VWAP on that half-hour bar, it was a well-defined sell, um, and it happened pretty quick. Um, last night, we had a good buy, breaking out of the range. So yeah, actually, if I'm going to be a better trader, I'm going to look at crude and start looking at that because that's the pattern.
We got Miles Shea says this would be a cool pre-market show. And Miles, I think you just deleted that comment, but I'm interested in what you're saying there. let us know in the chat, right? Give us a one in the chat if you think this would be a pretty cool pre-market show, or is it better at this time? And also, what you could always do, because a lot of this information applies when we're going into tomorrow, uh, you could just watch it before the market opens. So pre-market, just give us a one, two for a post market show where we keep it right now. We see seeing some ones in the chat. Um, Interesting, just very interesting. Not saying that we're going to go ahead and change it, but that is pretty interesting. Um, Thanks for that. It's always good to look outside the box. I'm gonna pull up Copper real quick because Copper was on my scouting report from yesterday, and the reason I'm pulling this up, Coach, is because we can have an opinion, but the market does not give a shit about your opinion. I talked about Copper yesterday. Uh, I talked about Copper yesterday and said that we were in this kind of range bound, uh, even though we're expanding what the ATR for the range. We were in this here, so potentially looking for a buy at the lows of this range. That's of course before seeing what today looked like, considering what happened yesterday as bringing us down to the lows of this range and looking for a buy. But if you guys remember what I said, and again, anything we say here is for educational purposes only, not a suggestion to take a trade. You should see Nightbot always sending out that risk disclosure. But just because I have this idea doesn't mean the market's going to agree with it. So I have to read what the market says. And uh, what it told me was, hey, you're 100% wrong about where this market is going. Talk about urgency trades, Coach. Copper was probably one of the best examples of an urgency trade that we had. And again, this is a reminder to myself to leave your opinion at the door. The markets don't care. And if I came in to buy this, hopefully I had a stop in a decent place because I was 100% wrong. And that's okay, right? You can have an opinion. I just find it a lot easier to try to identify what the flow of the market is and see if I can fit in that flow or where I can fit in that flow. Today in the Nasdaq, you could say that I was counter the flow, but waited until it kind of dried up in order to take the opposite direction, where we get a reversion trade. Uh, if I was a buyer in copper today and I said, you know what, this is a range bound market, it should go back up, and I didn't have a stop, I probably don't have an account. Um,
You
so
mean,
paying it.
coach,
Go ahead. Go
you
ahead,
could be
coach.
wrong?
Oh yeah, I think I'm definitely more wrong than right. 100%.
Now, I would say this too to add to that. If you bought that and you lost $100, $200, that's a good trade. And you might say that, well, no, it didn't make money. No, losing trades can be good, tr- good trades. They don't have to be profitable. I can't say that enough. One of these, if I'm not making money, I gotta find something that's making money. Well, that'd be great, except for it doesn't work that way, right? I love that that you brought that and you said, no, I have to take a loss. Because the if you don't take a loss here, you fight it, and you have bad habits of adding to a loser. Coach, you said those words. It's busted account.
More than taking a good loss, there was never a signal to buy this, right? And that's how I want to look at it, right? Where it's just like, okay, I want to buy it. We've talked about exactly what the A plus setup looks like for buying this. We get a 30-minute candle close outside of that range with VWAP leaving the range. This is the only example of it. And if we look where this candle closed, that's a very large rejection. Now, could I have preempted this trade where at one point we didn't get a candle close outside, but we got price action outside of it? Yeah, I could have preempted it, and that would have turned out to be a loss. But if I really look at it in hindsight, there was never a signal to take a long trade. So kind of knowing and having criteria, Coach, you talk about your four checkpoints for a trade. I think I had three, and I never got the fourth one, and it wasn't a go. Which I think saved me from taking a trade that was ultimately wrong. Do I care whether or not each trade, trade to trade is right or wrong? I don't. But sometimes it's there's no signal to do anything. In line with what you're thinking.
Yeah, I tell you what. That actually looks like the yen chart. That was another
Really.
good trade. Interesting. Um,
Um,
wow, that's a big what percentage was that down?
uh, third biggest percentage mover to the downside, 1.97% to the downside. At one point was down 2.5% for the day.
So another metal bites the dust. How about
Yep.
the silver?
Let's take a look at it. And then his Royal also just brought up hit retest back to the upside with a near perfect tap wick to VWAP downside entry. Yeah, this is a that's pretty awesome, right? Checking VWAP here, it's still down sloping. This is now coming into the New York session time. So if you missed this downward move here, it gave you another opportunity against VWAP to take that short. Let's look at silver real quick, and then I want to pull up a yen chart, coach. Silver looks the opposite, right? Maybe
Huh.
uh, silver had already kind of sold off. If we look at a 30-minute chart, let's look at a daily actually. Interesting. It's this white line here.
Uh, that's where support is.
Yep. Uh,
If it doesn't hold that support,
yeah.
that's what
200 moving
silver's.
average there on a daily chart, 29.30, we'll call it in silver. But if we look at a 30-minute chart today, was a little bit of a relief bounce from the sell-off that we've had. We see a couple of days ago, we checked that 200 moving average on the 30, continued to sell off, but today a little bit of a consolidation. Let's see, last night's open was right here, very small candle
Yeah, that.
on a 30-minute. It's like almost not even there. Uh,
Wow,
Tough one to take.
different. Yeah, different animal.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have expected that with that copper and gold move.
right,
That's why you'll hear me say it. Coach and I say it all the time. Each market is individual.
right. Have their own personalities.
They have their own flows and personalities. I just wanted to follow up about who are the largest holders of U.S. debt, and someone said Japan at 1.1 trillion, followed by China at 867 billion. Um, so if they're not buying, China's not buying U.S. debt and buying Bitcoin, could be good reason for yields rising. So, but that's my opinion. I don't know. They didn't call me.
Right. Any other markets, coach? We got about 5 minutes left here. Any markets right
Did,
now
did we look at the
on
yen?
no, we did not. We did not. Let's pull up the yen. Oh wow. Yen on a 30-minute below the 200 moving average, 50 and the 20 below that, trending lower like the yen likes to do.
Kind of
And
attached.
go ahead, coach.
Attached to the 10-year, attached to U.S. yields. We've
It,
done this
right.
many times. So the yen and the
Yes.
10-year, or
Almost
they're almost
identical
like
charts.
identical charts. Um, and we can see last night we did break out. I said if you follow our breakout VWAP, it doesn't always work. By the way, and if someone tells you it always works, run,
Right.
just run. Unless no. Okay, so we had an early breakout, what failed. Um, then they tried it again, double top, and that 200 moving average was, I think, the high.
So it was. Let me pull this back up again. My charts reset. Give me 1 second here.
But I found it interesting. The 10-year and the yen. I maybe I didn't sell enough 10-year, but I had a yen, so And
Your moving average to the
there it is.
tick.
And breakout and then flush. I really couldn't find a good bottom, but just some short covering towards the end of the day. 11 o'clock Central Time is around European close. Um,
It's tracking down towards that yearly low.
and what day? What date is that? July 11th.
July 11th, the infamous July 11th. Look at July 11th on any market that you trade.
Oh, wait a minute. Isn't that exactly six? No, we're coming. It's 5 months ago.
5 months. 5 months. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Look at July 11th. Very interesting day for a lot of markets. We got a question here, coaches. Do you see a day when no market presents a good setup? If so, do you guys sit on your hands? Uh, where no market is presenting a good setup, Paul. I think because I look at so many different markets, it's hard uh, to say that there's no good setup. The markets that I decide to look at for the day, do those present a great setup all the time? They don't. Um, there aren't very many days where I'm sitting down at my desk that I don't take a trade. It may be one trade, and then I decide that, hey, you know what, this isn't the kind of flow that I'm looking for, so I'll sit out. Um, but at any given time, I have 10 different markets that I'm using as a scanner. And it might sound like a lot, but I'm looking for, and you guys see it, looking for very specific patterns in these markets. So it doesn't take a whole lot to scan. Um, and I think out of those 10, I could probably find something. Andrew says Saturdays usually don't have any good setups. What about you,
Okay.
coach?
Well, cash Bitcoin, but no. There there are days where there's not good setups. There's days where there's setups that fail. Um, and it's I'm looking for that setup where I'm tempted to do is pretend it's there. Sometimes I get in too early, preempt it, and it's unprofessional of me. But I am human. Uh, but going back, yeah, there's usually something. But I don't want to don't be confused. Like even that yen, I covered a short in my swing trade, but when we got back to 200, I said, well, I got to get it back on. Um, so not all those setups works, but whatever. Here's the most important thing: define what you're looking for, uh, search for it, and take it. Don't assume it's going to work every time, but if you have an edge and you do it over time, it's going to work. What is the edge? Well, we're talking the setup. If your setup is good, you got to put it on. Some
Sure.
days they're not there. The key is the patience of taking only the setup,
Nothing
um, and,
else.
and nothing else. Don't trade to trade.
Paul H says, I ask because every day it seems that something is working. I imagine myself getting frustrated and desperate on a day like that. Yeah, and it can happen, right? Especially if you get in the mode of, hey, there's something, right? There's going to be something out there. That can also be, to me, where it's very helpful. And it's the way I learned how to trade, where we were using a stock scanner to find what was the highest volume. Um, so if you do get to a day where it seems like nothing, those are hard because your brain is telling you, hey, there's an opportunity somewhere out there, find it. Sometimes it's okay to just not place a trade either. Like you just said, coach, I think coming into some of the holiday time, right, we might see days prior to holidays, and every year is going to be different, but we might see volume decrease across the board, right, where there's really not a high probability setup. And in that case, I just lower what my expectations are for the outcomes of moves, especially if we see ATRs contracting in a bunch of different markets, lower my expectations. And then if something really good sets up, great. If not, I go do something else.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
Let me see if I
Oh,
do have notes for the day, but I need to find them.
all right.
Oh,
While you're doing that, and it says Vince
yeah, go
Borrego
ahead.
said, "I thought China outlawed Bitcoin." That's a good point. Um, I know they outlawed mining. I don't know if they can stop the ownership. And heck, their central bank could just buy it anyway. I don't know. That's it. I'll have to investigate. I don't remember they did out. I know they outlawed mining. I don't know about ownership. I don't even know if they can control ownership. But good question. I'll delve
Sure,
into that.
with internet service provider access and things like that, they may be able to block certain websites and things. Maybe, who knows? That's just me making up hypotheticals again. But last night, 20 traders won an entry to Dakota's first Top Step Labs. Q&A with Coach Dakota is going to be happening tomorrow, so we'll be hearing exactly what that process was like for those 20 traders, which I think is pretty cool. Getting to ask, the number one trader for the most part at Top Step uh, about his process and any other questions that those traders have. Um, and if you have a review that you want to leave for us, I can't find the Trustpilot link. My bad. Tim, if you're watching, I'm sorry. Uh, you guys know where to go. Trustpilot.com/topstep and leave us a review there. Also, hit that like button if you haven't done so already. Tell your friends and family to subscribe. I am taking some mental notes about what you guys said about a pre-market show. We obviously have Hoag's amazing pre-market show that he does every day. Um, but I'm taking some notes on that. The one thing Coach Paul and I really love about doing this segment when we do it is the markets aren't moving, so we can focus on you know just studying the tape,
Plus,
film room, not having to make a decision. Anytime markets are moving, we get the hey, well, why don't you look at this? It's moving. If I'm just thinking out loud now, if we were to do this as a pre-market show, unless I already had a trade on, I probably wouldn't talk about active markets at all. And that just might change the structure a little bit, which is okay, right? Change is good. Just thinking about it, we will take that information. We'll kind of brainstorm to see if there's an opportunity to maybe do both, and we'll let you know. But definitely interested in what you all are saying there, and I think when enough people say it, there's definitely some value in it. So thank you as always, Coach Paul. Thank you for another great session.
thank you, Coach Jay, and to our audience. Bye.
Have a good one. Mary, can I describe my A plus setup? We'll do that tomorrow. Just remind me. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one. Bye.
All right. Bye.